So here we're back, and this is Don Goertz with Greg DeMarco. And how you been, Greg?
It's been good. Just been a busy boy, just like yourself, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're in the August, hot days in August. So do you guys have the hot days and the high humidity back there in Ontario?
So disgustingly so that I'm thinking about moving west.
I know you were thinking about Calgary, but Calgary had a huge storm, I guess, last night. I don't know. Did you see that?
I saw it on the YouTube feed there. I guess they got a hailstorm of some sort.
Yeah,
Looks like snow.
yeah.
So I'm sure there's a lot of damaged cars. So one thing I noticed about Calgary when I was there the last time is that there's a lot of cars with dents in them.
A friend of ours was there one time. They were traveling through that area when one of those hailstorms hit, and they got dents, like multiple, so many dents on their car that the insurance company wrote it off. So because it would just cost a fortune to fix, so they
Yeah.
wrote it off anyway. There's nothing wrong with the car, and he didn't mind the dents, so he bought it back real cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, that's what happens, you know. I mean, it's such funny weather out there. I'm actually heading there next week, so
all right, well, good. I
yeah,
hope you enjoy yourselves.
yeah,
But
yeah.
we've been talking. We introduced the book by John Maxwell last week. Everyone communicates, few connect. And today we're going to be talking about chapter one. Where how connecting increases our influence in every situation.
Yeah.
And for our listeners that may not be familiar with John C. Maxwell, he's written. I think he must have written over 80 books by now, and over 30 million copies of them have been sold, and he's recognized as one of the leadership gurus, particularly in the business world, I think, where all his books are based on relationships and leadership. But he's one of the leadership gurus, and just he writes an entertaining book. I think that's one of the keys to his books is that they're easy to read. They're
Yeah.
not there's a lot of meat in there, but they're an easy read as well. So I want to
Yeah.
encourage people to go out and get the book and read it. Keep it as a resource because it's something that you can go back and refer to all the time.
I do. I do all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the main points in chapter one are connecting with others is a key to success in life and leadership. You know, I think one of the things that when I was reading through that I thought was pretty interesting was we can communicate. Like that's the title of the book. Everyone communicates, few connect. But how do we connect? Because our brain, like they've measured this, and maybe it's probably worse now. I don't know. I don't remember when John wrote this book, but I think it was back probably at least 15 years ago. Maybe it's 20 years ago by now. But they came up with a statistic that said that our brain gets 35,000 messages a day.
Yeah.
And so if we're one of those messages to somebody else, then how do I know that I'm connecting with you? I mean, like, just think about it. 35,000 like 20 years ago, and with the internet and the screen time that we have today, how many more messages are we listening to all the time? And isn't that going to be even more difficult for us to connect with our clients, with our friends, with our family, and all that kind of stuff. So
Well, I think one of the issues is with a lot of people is there's not a lot of connecting because there's not a lot of listening.
yeah,
I think we get distracted by things, and I think that's the biggest killer of connecting with anyone is that we're not listening to what's happening. But there are so many factors, Don. You know this from when you start meeting somebody to when you start talking to them and getting to know them and all this kind of stuff that lead up to a good connection or a bad connection. And I think it just, in the end, always it comes down to us. What's our intention? How are we setting ourselves up? How do we set ourselves up for connecting with somebody? Like, are we cognizant of that? Are we having something intentional about that? Do we want to? There's so many things. I think it's as he says in his book, it can make you or break you.
yeah,
You either connect or you don't.
yeah, yeah. And without connection, we. we're not going to make, well, in the area of sales, without connecting with our clients, we're not going to make that sale, right? And I
Well,
mean, and it's
yeah,
not just about making the sale. I like the another point that he makes is that connecting goes beyond just communicating. It's about understanding and relating, and that's I think what you were talking about.
yeah.
Where to listen to somebody is to actually hear what they're saying and to relate to what they're saying.
Well, I think that if you aren't if you aren't getting to know somebody by understanding what it is they want, then you're not going to connect with them. So I mean, that's how it sort of comes down to in the end is what kind of connection are we making, and are we intentional about that?
Yeah. So I mean, they talk about empathy and emotional intelligence. And those are two factors I think that we have to incorporate into our listening skills. Is learning, and being paying attention to being empathetic and to um, having emotional intelligence and for some personality types that's harder than others. So um, I think the emotional intelligence part. I think it's something that we can, when we're aware of it, we can. It's a lot easier for us to make adjustments to what to what we're hearing.
Yeah, and I mean, there are so many little factors that lead up to to making a connection with somebody. I think if it can get overwhelming with some people, when you teach this stuff, that's interesting. What I find is, people want to take notes, and they want to put certain techniques into place, and they want to do everything in succinct order. And this is the first thing. This is how you do it. But really, it should come. And it's easy to say, I guess, because as you just mentioned, certain personalities sort of don't go that way very well with connecting. But the reality is, it's a sort of a natural sequence. I think if you actually care about somebody, you'll be able to connect with them.
Yeah, he has, and being able to connect is key to our level of success. I mean, you mentioned that a little bit earlier, but one of the interesting quotes that he has in his book is that if you can connect with others at every level, your influence is no longer limited and capped by your position or your title. So it's if you're a manager or somebody that has people that work for you, your level, it's you can communicate to them what you want them to do for you, what you want them to do in their job. But if you're not connecting with them, they're not going to be as motivated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's really a very critical part in. It's not just sales; it's every day of our life. It's how we interact with people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing about it, is this book was written for people to connect with others, and but in a sales forum, it's just absolutely critical to understand this stuff.
Yeah. So let's go through it a little bit and talk about some more specific things. So what does it mean for if I ask you the question, so what does it mean to truly connect with someone?
So what that means to me is, when I approach somebody, I firmly believe it's your demeanor, and it's how you present yourself to somebody else. So you're coming off as stuffy and uninteresting, or are you coming off as someone who's actually empathetic and caring? I think it happens in the first few seconds of any meeting, and that can happen with a phone call, and then it's not as effective as face to face, but you certainly can come off with a good attitude. And I think that's what it comes down to, is your attitude. Whenever I approach someone, I usually have a big grin on my face, and I'm saying hello. I'm Greg, or hello, how can I help you, or something along that lines, where I have a big grin on my face, a smile, and how you folks doing today? It's nice to meet you. That I think in and of itself is just huge in creating a comfort level with the person that you're going to talk to. I've never had a horrible reaction from that. You know what I mean? If you come in with you come in grinning, your posture is awful, and that's never going to be helpful.
Yeah. A part of that's your body language, right? Like like you don't want to have um, one of it in the old show Seinfeld. Um,
Yeah,
um, Kramer was he had a situation where he's a close talker, right? Where they come like they start talking, like this
yeah, I
close,
remember.
So I mean, like part of the body language and making
Uh,
people feel comfortable, is recognizing that people don't you got your own personal space, so it's important to learn how close you should be and stuff like that as well. It all comes down to I think the idea of smiling first is a good idea. It's a good first step, to be open and to show somebody that you actually are open to hearing what they have to say, and don't jump. I think, excuse me, one of the things that salespeople sometimes do is they jump right into their presentation. You know,
yeah,
when
don't do that.
especially, yes, especially when they're on the floor, right?
Yeah,
You have to make sure that the people want to hear your presentation first. You know,
yeah, because they just might be, as the proverbial as it goes, they might be tire kickers, or they might be prop spinners, or they may just be looking around. Who knows? And there's some gurus that'll tell you, no, that's just a ruse. You need to confront that. But the reality is simply this: when you first meet somebody, have a big smile, be very stand up tall, stand as tall as you can. Put your shoulders back, don't hunch over, and just speak to them and listen to them. Don't
yeah, that's
don't lollygag.
Yeah, yeah, you're kind of talking about how we can connect and increase our influence, like or different things that we can do, so
Yeah.
but how can connecting increase your influence in different areas of your life?
Well, I mean, I think that the more you get to know people and the more they get to know you, I think there's a certain amount of vulnerability that has to play into this for trust to happen. And that's ultimately what you're trying to do, is you're trying to gain trust and to help them. And that's, I think, key is you've got to build this trust. And once you can build that kind of trust, your influence becomes exponentially larger and larger, you know.
It's
And plus, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I just think that that really is key, because isn't that what we're trying to do? Is we're trying to get people to we're trying to trust each other. It's not a one-way street. We want to understand them, and we want to understand what it is we can help them with. And
Yeah,
you can't do that unless there's trust. And if I don't trust them, it's going to be more difficult for me to help them.
yeah, they have to have trust in you. I mean, let's talk. We're talking about the sales conversation mostly, I think here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
that's right.
if they're going to trust you, they're going to trust that you're going to tell them the straight goods, that you're going to be serious about helping them. And then if you're going to trust them, you have to be able to have trust in them to know that once they commit, that they're going to be able to fulfill their obligation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Because in the end, if you don't, they can tell you whatever they want, but it doesn't mean they're going to do it, right?
Yeah, they have to be able to do it. So what about with in the family situation? You and I both have had kids, and our kids are adults now. But what was it like when they were teenagers? Like all of a
Huh.
sudden, did your kids change from being nice kids to being obnoxious people?
Well, one could be very obnoxious. The other was not like that. But you know what I noticed? That's a very good question, Don. Because with my one child, I would get angry very easily, and I realized that that isn't working and never has with him. So I had to basically switch gears and learn patience and try and understand where he was coming from, because it was always the parental thing, you do as I say, and this is good for you and this isn't good for you. Well, he was very, very intelligent. He could question everything. What do you mean? Why is it like this? Why is it like? Well, so after me understanding that, it took a lot of slaps across the head. I mean, my head, to understand where my problem was. And it was my problem because I didn't understand where he was coming from. So when you switch that gear, and start to focus on the other person, things start to change. That's where the influence starts to work.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that you weren't always the brightest parent in the room.
No, not by a long shot. I make a way better granddad than I did a father, I think.
Yeah, I think I think it's interesting because I have my grandchildren as well, and the youngest one now is 12. I can't believe it. I got eight grandchildren. The youngest is 12, and the oldest is 23. And I'm thinking, okay, how did I ever have it? How do I ever get a 23-year-old grandchild? That's ridiculous. But anyway, it's funny as you watch them grow up and go through different stages, and my one grandson just got married a couple of weeks ago, and I'm thinking, okay, like, are you old enough to get married? And then I think, okay, well, I was young when I got married too, so I really don't have much to say on that. But one of the interesting things that happened in the ceremony is you see your grandchildren as grandchildren, so they're kids, right? You see them as kids, and
Yep.
I'm watching my grandson, and he's not very old. He's not the oldest one. He'll be 20 in September, so he was 19, and which is young these days for people getting married. But I was watching him, and as I'm watching him, it dawned on me. I said, this is not a little boy anymore. This is a young man who's expressing, who's growing and maturing, and it just kind of like all of a sudden I just saw him as somebody different. And I think that's important too, as our relationships evolve, with people, particularly our relationships with family or friends, is that we have to see them for who they are, and that
Yeah.
and that's how we really can connect with them, as well as we can see people for who they are, and what's important to them.
Well, I think we got to put our judgment aside and really listen to and understand what and who they've become. If we're talking about kids, if we're talking about just people, then we need to put our judgments aside and just sort of listen to where somebody's coming from. But that all comes down to intention, doesn't it? What's your intention in getting into a conversation with somebody, whether it's relationships, career, what are the intentions? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, yeah. There's
You
lots
know,
lots of different things there. So, what are some barriers that prevent people from connecting effectively?
um, fear. They're scared.
Fear? You think fear?
Uh, I think fear is a big one. I think because they're entering into the unknown and they're uncertain, they lack a certain amount of confidence themselves, self awareness. I think that's where you develop poor communications, because if you're unclear about your position and what you're doing, how can you communicate that to others when someone asks you the question? What are you doing? Or what about this? And you start stumbling around. I think it's fear. That's a common. It's fear and lack of confidence, which affects your attitude. And then you can't. You're just unaware of what you need to. You need to take stock of what it is you're doing. Take a step back
Yeah,
and start to think into it.
I think you know those are very real things in communication. But I was thinking a lot of people don't know what to say.
Yeah.
They haven't developed good communication skills, and I think that's what this book can help people with, is helping them develop good communication skills. And what my goal with this um, series is that we would help people do that to develop good communication skills. But what I was remembering, though, was years ago I took the Dale Carnegie course, How to
Yeah.
Win Friends and Influence People. Now that's an old course. I mean, but the principles that course teaches are timeless. and there, that was one of the most beneficial courses that I think I ever took in my life. But one of the sessions, what they did was they talked about how to talk to people. And they say, in your mind, you see a picture of a house. So when you meet somebody, if you look at them and you think, okay, here's a house, you think, okay, where do they live? And then so the house represents where the person lives. And then the next thing you see is you see, kids, or you see people in the house. So you say, okay, what do you talk about their family? So people like to talk about where they live. They like to talk about their family. And then there's a chimney on the top of the house. And then on that chimney, there's a big work glove. And that work glove represents what people what their job is. So you can talk about where they live, you can talk about their family, you can talk about what they do for work. And then in that work glove they were holding a tennis racket. So the tennis racket represents hobbies. So what are the hobbies that a person has? People like to talk about what they like to do. That's one of the natural things they do. And then stuck in the webbing of that tennis racket is a big, huge jet. So people travel. So you got people will want to talk about where they live, their family, what they do for work, what they do for fun, and where they've traveled. So just knowing that, I think, helps people build some skills in their communication.
Oh, I think you're right. I think that's really good. Those are very good points that you've just made. There's some people, though, Don, I think that I'm the kind of person, for example, someone said to me the other day, they were asking me about, well, I'll use the example as moving to Alberta, because I've been considering that for the last 6 months. I'm here in Ontario, as you know. It's humid, it's disgusting, and I want to get into a more healthier environment. So, but I sometimes don't communicate that very well, and the reason is because I'm thinking about it. I'm a thinker, and I like to sort of marinate things in my head before I start doing things. And my partner basically said, "Well, what do you think? Because you never tell me." And I'm like, "Well, you're right. I should say something, but I said, here's my thoughts on it. I just haven't formulated a final decision based on that because I'm still thinking about it." But that's the problem. Is if you're with somebody, and this is a valuable lesson, I think, because the confidence that people have in you is based on what you, and the trust is based on what you are communicating to them. And in that instance, I wasn't communicating anything other than it's not like I wasn't thinking about it and I wasn't going to share it. It's just that I was thinking about it. But they kind of interpreted that as maybe I'm not thinking about it or whatever. But the reality is I should have shared my thoughts on it. But that's kind of, there's different scenarios for people. If you're not communicating, it's not building trust, and it's not building any kind of comfort level for someone to think, okay, is this going to go or is this not going to go? What's going to happen? Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean?
Oh
There's
yeah,
a certain uncertainty there.
yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. I spend a lot of time in my head. and
Well,
my
you and I are like that.
and my
We are similar that way.
and my wife gets she kind of gets mad at me for doing that. So how can we become a better listener and improve our ability to connect? What are some tips that we could give to our listeners?
Well, I think first of all, just shift the gears for darn sakes in your head. It's about them, not you. As soon as you make that shift, as soon as you decide that you're going to listen to somebody or that you're going to talk to somebody or do something, you have to make that shift. It's about them. What is it they want? So you're going to start to ask questions, but there's body language things that you need. So it all started when I smiled at them when I came in the room. It all started with, standing up tall, being confident in myself, not intimidating, but confident, because intimidating means that I've got a frown on my face and I've got a bad tone in my voice. But no, I came in with a smile. I'm standing up straight and tall. I might make a joke. I might just say, it's really nice to see you. I'm Greg, blah blah blah, and then ask questions. They always say don't ask how can I help you, but maybe what brought you here today, or something along that lines. But it's making contact, eye contact, asking follow-up questions, asking all kinds of questions about why they're there.
Eye contact is one that I'm always conscious about because I got wonky eyes. So, uh, you know,
You should maybe paint one on the inside of your glasses there.
yeah,
So,
I'll
I
just
don't know.
cover this one up and say, okay, look at this one. You know,
I mean, everybody's got their thing, right?
I've had some people actually, some people that know me. They say, excuse me. I said, I know, I forgot which eye I'm supposed to look at.
Well, you got to make a joke. You got to own that kind of stuff.
But
Like that's how I see it.
yeah,
You maybe you introduce yourself and you say you look into this eye.
yeah. Well,
I don't.
it's what's interesting is that a lot of the different video companies now, or the video editing companies now, they've actually, one of the things they've done is for people that make videos like what we're doing. Sometimes they're looking at a screen, or they're looking at their camera, and their camera is in a different spot than where their screen is. So if my camera is over here and my screen is over here, I'm looking over here, but I'm not. My eyes aren't pointing forward. Where but what the AI is now, they've got it so that they've set the editing programs can actually change the orientation of a person's eyes, so it makes it look like they're looking straight forward. So that, I think that's kind of interesting, how people even think it's important on a video. So just
Yeah,
before we break off here, can you share an experience where connecting with someone had a positive impact on you?
yeah. Actually, I can. Not too long ago, and this is sort of related to real estate. Actually, uh, I was talking to a lady. She was moving, and you know how stressful that can be, moving. And she was really nervous because she was trying to get some things together, and I was helping her put some stuff together. And she was frazzled because of delivery times and stuff like this. I said to her, "You know what? Don't worry. This is how we can handle it." I said, "I know this is stressful for you. I'm going to figure out all the logistics for you leading up to this. Just give me 2 days to come up with everything. And then don't worry, I won't abandon you. I know that this is very stressful. You have young kids. This is happening in your life. That's happening." Just me saying these things to her, she actually paused for about 5 seconds. At the end, she goes, she was crying a little bit. She said, "Thank you." She goes, I needed to hear that you're going to take care of it and that everything's going to be okay." She goes, "I was really stressing out about this. The kids are young. I trust that you're going to help me." So she said that was a very positive thing for her. And I think just having that certain amount of care and understanding about someone's situation. The only reason why that worked was because I listened to what she was telling me.
Yeah,
I could hear the stress in her voice, and that, oh my God, I'm not going to get this stuff delivered in time. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. Yada, yada, yada. And then right away, I just kicked into, okay, here's how we're going to handle it. I'm going to find this stuff. We're going to get this stuff done. That stuff done, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry, I'm not going to ban you. I know this is very, very stressful right now because moving, especially before school. And that just for her was just like a relief. She said that. Those were her words.
yeah.
So,
You exercise empathy and emotional intelligence.
yeah.
So both of those are good. So connecting, just to wrap up, connecting is a crucial skill for personal and professional success. I think that's something that we all need to recognize, is that when we're connecting with people, we're going to be communicating better. And it requires empathy, it requires understanding, empathy, and the ability to relate to others. So what
Yeah.
would you like to say to our listeners, just to recap about uh, on how connecting increases your influence in every situation. Just a brief summary.
Briefly, I think, Don, it's critical that you bring to the table attitude of positivity and that you are there to help. And I think that is really critical. And you have to have a calm demeanor about things and going with the intention to understand their situation. I can't express that enough. And, you know, everybody gets stressed out because they're doing something like this. Let's say they're on their first sales call or they're meeting someone for the first time. If you listen, if you just go with the intention of, oh, let me just find out about them. I don't need to talk about myself. If they ask me questions, great. But let me just focus on them. The conversation becomes natural because all you're doing is responding to something someone says. You're not trying to think of the next line you need to make because this is a sales thing and you got to say it this way and that way. Throw that shit out as far as I'm concerned. Just talk to people and listen. If you can do that, you're going to make huge strides in your career and just with relationships with people.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Greg, for sharing some of your insights and developing better communication skills. And it's been fun talking about how connecting increases your influence in every situation. And I look forward to discussions in our upcoming episodes.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's great call.
Thanks.
Thanks.